Hello, everyone. My name is Arj Devadas with ACGI Software, and welcome to the Knowledge Builder webinar series. We're going to kick this series off today with our first presenter and webinar, and I will make some introductions in just a minute, but today's webinar is titled, Are Your Credentials Future Ready? Making the Case for Micro-Credentials. So when I started with ACGI back in 2004, I started to hear a lot more just about badging and then the digital badging and micro-credentials came along. It's become pretty popular and really has become a exciting and in the marketplace. That and micro-credentials, what do we really know about it? It's still a little bit confusing. So today, we're hoping that we can bring a little bit more clarity and answer some questions like, is digital badging micro-credentials? What's involved in developing and granting micro-credentials? How to generate new revenue streams of micro-credentials and innovative trends and just how to stay ahead of the curve. So those are some of the things we'll discuss in just a moment. I just wanted to take care of a few things, if I may, today. Very quickly about ACGI Software. We're developers of the Association Anywhere Association Management System, our flagship product, but also Certelligence, a credentialing management system used by both certifying bodies and those organizations who do accreditation or some sort of licensure. We work with professional societies, trade associations, and then peer credentialing organizations. Little housekeeping today, very, very important. I hope you all are with us right now, and we can see some people in the room. Hopefully they won't miss us, but I'll try to remind throughout the presentation. You can earn an ASAE CAE credit today, 1 credit for the full credit hour that you participate in this webinar. All right, so with that behind us, I would like to just introduce Dr. Ginger Malin. Ginger, are you with us right now?
I sure am. Thank you, Arj.
Sure. Ginger is the founder and executive vice president of business development over at BadgeCert. Just so you know, BadgeCert is an ACGI resource partner, and we had Ginger present at our Knowledge Days conference last year.
All right, everyone see my screen okay? Perfect.
Looks great from here.
All right, terrific. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. I'm really excited to share this topic with you. This is one of the things from our business standpoint that is constantly a question, is differences between micro-credentialing and badging and how it is that micro-credentialing is really making its splash in the certification market. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about a variety of different things from a terminology and topic standpoint. I am going to be talking about these 3 major ideas. One, obviously, is digital badging, and I'm going to talk through the differences between what digital badging is and micro-credentialing. I'm also going to sort of lay the foundation between what macro credentials are, or traditional field-based, role-based kinds of credentials, versus micro-credentialing. So those 2 things, even though they exist within the same space, they are different concepts and they really complement each other. And finally, I'm going to go through the different types of micro-credentials that that clients of ours and more of the broader educational market are really focusing in on. The 3 are vertical, horizontal, and value added. So I'm going to break those down, and we're going to talk a little bit about how you can apply some of those concepts into your organizational goals. So first, Arj, I'm going to start with the poll question. Where are you on this journey? So the 4 options are 1, thinking about it, starting to explore micro-credentialing. Next one is strategizing, or you're having your key questions already answered. You're getting going in the micro-credentialing world. Next, starting designing, you need more confirmation and guidance, but you're already well on your way. And the last one is ready to implement. So Arj is going to put the poll out there, and if you'll answer that, I'll give you a minute.
Okay. Everyone should see the polling questions up there. Please take a minute to answer those questions. Thanks. Or question. Just going to give it a little bit more time here and we'll close the poll down. Okay. Let me close that poll. And Ginger, should I share the results?
Yes, please.
Great. Here we go.
Oh, so we're just getting going on this. We have a couple folks who on the webinar who are ready to get going. So it's a variety there, but I'm thrilled that many people are just starting to think about it. So that's a very typical answer that we get today. A lot of people have heard about it and the buzz is there, but they're saying, okay, what does this mean for us? And Arj kind of outlined some of those other goals that organizations are having, and we're gonna break those down. So first, I want to start out with some terminology clarification. So I've mentioned the term digital badging several times today. Obviously, that is what our company is focused in on. However, digital badges are not micro-credentials. Badging really helps support the recognition and the acknowledgement of somebody going through a micro-credential, but micro-credentials are an actual learning event in and of itself. So when people confuse those two terms, that's what we're talking about, because digital badging is really that opportunity to describe the underlying accomplishment. So when somebody goes through the event or completes a micro-credential, obviously I'm going to go through that a little bit more in detail, they can earn a digital badge for that event. The digital badge will have all the embedded metadata that an individual can put on any social media platform, that they can share on resumes, email signatures, etc. However, badges represent that learning. They aren't the same thing. So I like to just clarify that from the beginning. So when we think about what credentialing opportunities there are today, there's a variety of different terminology that organizations or people are talking about. So again, the terminology isn't always consistent. So I want to lay that groundwork so that we're all talking about the same thing. We obviously have those big macro credentials that are all the way to the left. That's what we're thinking about with our traditional credentials. Many of you are certification bodies, so that is your certification, it's your license, it's your degree from a university or higher ed institution. So that's that micro concept. Then there's a lot of other organizations that are utilizing different language like nano credentials or pico credentials. So there's a variety of different language terminology that's out there. The term micro-credentials really looks at that concept of specializations, course clusters, things that are more specific and nuanced in nature that can, again, complement the macro-credential, or it can supplement aspects of gaps within somebody's knowledge base, but they complement each other. And so for terminology's sake, we're going to be talking about macro and micro-credentials today. So as I mentioned before, the differences may be both. Typically, when we're talking about your certification, we're talking about that macro credential. The focus is really on that broader experience. And it's certainly always, I'm going to not say always, but almost always comes with that more formal assessment. It could be assessing knowledge, skills, abilities. There's a whole variety of things that it could be focused in on. But it definitely is a broader, more generalized opportunity to recognize somebody's knowledge within an industry. Some aspects of that, I gave an example here, is the broader example of that is certified food scientist. It's just another kind of broader idea. Your CAE credential that I know you're getting some credit for today, that also could be more of that certification, holistic kind of look at it. Many organizations are also going to that idea of certificate programs. Certificate can be either both macro or micro. So again, it has learning objectives associated with it. Typically, there is an assessment involved. As an example, IFT, food technologist, that could be potentially the food packaging certificate. So many of you have already started that certificate process, so that becomes an opportunity to recognize people for those kinds of learning objectives or nuanced skills. However, when we talk about micro-credentials, it may be more based on specific educational content. It could be on a competency. It's often developmental, so there may be something that it's staged at. And it oftentimes is something that's more of a discrete skill or competency. So at the bottom is, again, example-wise, alternative proteins, food waste and world hunger. So it's nuanced. It may or may not be associated with that certification, but oftentimes that certification is generalized, whereas micro-credentials are very specific. So a lot of times people ask me, all right, so who is the target for the micro-credential? And I say everyone in your learning development world. So when we think about millennials or people just emerging into your industry, they're really interested in career growth. They may not actually be ready to sit for your exam for your certification, but you want to capture them as new people in the industry. You want to engage them. You want them to want to be part of your organization. So that's a very important way to bring them in. It may mean that they have to have 3 to 5 years of experience in order to sit for your exam or your assessment. It may be that they have to have other kinds of qualifications. It may be that they have to have a degree or other kinds of, again, qualifications in order to enter into your certification program. But they still, it's still an opportunity to capture them while they're getting going into the career growth. So that might be a real wonderful opportunity for micro-credentials, as it's a starting place, a pathway towards certification. For those experienced people, it also helps them to stay current. So they may already have earned your credential, but it gives them opportunities to expand their knowledge base, to expand their expertise, get recognized for various ways that they've specialized in your industry. And that helps them to stay current and helps them be recognized for all the things that they're doing in their commitment to your industry and certainly to their careers. So again, when we talk about that traditional credentialing model, I talk about it in a negative way here. Obviously, it's not negative, but it's more broad. There may be only 1 or 2 specific pathways to eligibility. So it may be that you only can have a degree and then you're ready to enter into that certification. It may be that it's, again, years of experience, et cetera, that you can then sit for that certification. It could be also completion of a certificate program. But it's very, very prescribed in a lot of organizations, and there's only 1 or 2 pathways to get there. It also often takes a very long time to eligibility. So oftentimes you can't just graduate from school and enter right into the certification program. It oftentimes takes other kinds of experiences in order to be prepared to sit for that certification or be prepared to earn, have the knowledge base in order to earn that credential. Again, broad is a huge aspect of this, that it is oftentimes the whole field or the whole role. So they do need some experience in order to have the knowledge set and opportunities to learn some of the things that they need in order to successfully attain the certification. And there's not always recognition along the way. So I talk about the traditional credentialing model is oftentimes inflexible, one way to get there. Sometimes it's inconvenient in that it could be burdensome in terms of getting there, because you want as a new person in an industry to initially get to the ground running. You want to get in there, you want to have some knowledge base, you want to build that, but oftentimes you have to wait so long in order to get there. So when we think about what the newer, more desired credentialing model might look like, it certainly is more flexible. So it gives earners or learners the opportunity to have their, it's not a specific pathway, they can have other pathways to get towards the goal, be it certification or certificate. Also, it's also a lot of times, oftentimes convenient in terms of it gives them the opportunity to be able to follow their own pathway and be able to enter the learning environment at a time that is indeed convenient for them. It also can be earned in reasonable time frames. So it doesn't take 3 to 5 years to be able to sit for the credential, but rather it could be more nuanced. It's a quicker opportunity to get there. And the last thing I think that is the most important is that it has to be meaningful. And it should be really relevant to their employment. So what we're finding in the broader space of certification in general, we find that micro-credentials are one of those opportunities that organizations have to create learning events that are really tied into the JTA as well as just the kinds of things that employers are looking for, be it soft skills, be it other kinds of things within the industry, and obviously more skill-based, very smaller skills, competencies that somebody has to have in order to be successful in their career. So from a terms of micro-credentialing, it can be just the learning, it could be just the assessment, or it could be both. So it can also be that mini version of the certification or the certificate models. So in general, there is no one right way to think about micro-credentialing, but many organizations that are involved in certification do want some assessment included in there. It isn't just something that is easy to attain and a no-brainer, there is some weight and rigor associated with it. So in terms of what the goals are, obviously one of the things that's important is to provide that pathway. So you want to recognize people who have reached those various milestones along the path towards certification, or as they earn certification, it's that pathway beyond that. You also want to be able to have the freedom or the flexibility to be able to recognize people who have subsets of and display subsets of skills. Some of you may utilize certificates for that purpose, but oftentimes what we see in the broader industry is that organizations don't have the capability or the flexibility to be able to provide their members or their certificates or stakeholders with opportunities to be recognized for things that they're doing, their commitments to improving their professional development. And you as the association, or you as the organization that's in the middle of that ecosystem, has a lot of authority over being able to say, yep, this person has attained this skill or competency in our industry. So having that authority to be able to bestow that recognition onto your certificates is really, really important, and it's an important role to play. And that's where that cross-section of micro-credentials and badging comes in. So by providing the educational opportunities for somebody to earn a micro-credential and then being able to provide a badge that recognizes that is where that cross-section really happens. The other part of that is, again, you want your members to stay engaged. You want to have reasons to outreach to them. You want to give them reasons to come back to your website and to find value within the educational programs that you provide. And micro-credentials really allow for that freedom and that flexibility. So beyond just the certification, you may have other opportunities for somebody to earn a micro-credential or be recognized for a skill set or a competency. And again, that helps them to stay engaged with your organization. So just a couple benefits is obviously addressing those new skill areas. One of the things that we find, I'm going to give you an example of a nursing association. A couple years back when the Zika virus was exploding, especially in the East Coast, a lot of associations were scrambling to say, okay, we need to address this. Our certificates really want to have the knowledge base and show that they have a certificate or some kind of acknowledgement that they have knowledge in this area. And so they were scrambling to be able to provide that. A micro-credential gives that flexibility and gives that opportunity for an organization to be able to create content and to provide acknowledgement of the learning of that content in a very flexible and nimble way. It also helps for maintaining relevancy in the industry. Somebody may have earned a credential 10, 20 years back, especially if it doesn't expire, and they want to show the fact that they have a commitment to staying relevant in their industry. So by having the opportunity to earn these micro-credentials in various aspects, especially as competencies and skill sets need to change with the changing times, this again gives you the ability to be nimble and create these opportunities for your certificates to be recognized for various types of learning events and skills that they're developing within their industry. Two other aspects that I think are very, very important is this idea of revenue. So some organizations are saying that this could be a potential revenue driver. So certainly recertification renewal is a main way that many certification bodies are generating that revenue. This gives another opportunity for individuals to come back to your organization and say, okay, what else? What other value are you providing me? And by giving them the ability to earn these micro-credentials, you can actually generate revenue from those opportunities. And again, obviously find opportunities to provide that value add for your certificates. And many of you also are in spaces where there may be a competing organization that that's also offering certification. So that having that competitive advantage is also really a vital aspect of being able to differentiate yourself from another organization, and certainly providing the opportunity for your certificates to differentiate themselves. So the three micro-credentials that I'm going to be talking about today are the vertical, the horizontal, and the value added. And I separate those out because I think it provides the context for how it is that you're going to think about, okay, here I am just starting out with this opportunity to consider what micro-credentials are, and this can help organize your ideas around that. So the first one is this idea of leveling up or vertical. where an individual can earn a micro-credential at each level of their skill development. So you can see here, these are badges that would represent those micro-credentials. But you can see as an example here, the stars can represent that hierarchy that somebody can go through as they're going through a program. So some organizations are saying, all right, our certification is here at the associate level. It's fairly general, but then we're giving the opportunity then for a person who's already earned their certification to move up that ladder. So it may be a certification, then it could be a professional level type. It may be that they earn their certification and it's plus 5 years of experience, or it could be that they earn their certification and they earn 5 or 6 different micro-credentials and it levels up to the professional level. And finally, that expertise level, it may be that they have to become a mentor or provide other evidence that they have reached that expert level. And again, a micro-credential can provide that context around how it is that somebody can move up those different levels. So when we think about this vertical opportunity or leveling up opportunity, things that you may want to consider if this seems like an appropriate way for you to create your micro-credentialing program, is that you can consider whether there is either a functional area or a specific role in your field that can be broken down to discrete knowledge sets. So is it that, if I'm going to use nursing example again, is it that you have a certification in surgical nursing, and that there might be other opportunities like working with in cardiology, or it may be working with pediatric patients or what have you. Is there actual opportunities to break that apart, or is there other discrete opportunities for you to develop that knowledge set and also be recognized for that knowledge set? So it may be that there's specific technology tools that a certification wouldn't be able to cover, but an individual wants to be able to be recognized for having knowledge in a certain technology or within a certain environment. Maybe it's a community hospital versus a university hospital, whatever that may be. So how is it that somebody can then move up that ladder as they gain more and more experience in that specific industry? So when I think about horizontal, it's not necessarily one of those opportunities where you have to move up into different levels, but rather it gives you an opportunity to take a series of classes or courses, a cluster of courses potentially, in no particular order. So it could be that you offer 10 different micro-credentials in different areas, and it doesn't mean that there's any prerequisites. It gives that opportunity then for somebody to follow their own pathway. And again, when you think about that as an opportunity for an individual learner and to create their own pathway to be able to really support the fact that they may be in a specific job or in a specific area, and they know what it will take in order for them to develop the knowledge set that will help them to be more successful in their workplace. This would give them the opportunity then to say, okay, I'm going to pick and choose the micro-credentials that I want to earn in order to help facilitate that, either moving up the ladder within their own industry, or certainly attaining other opportunities for different job placement. So here's just an example of different courses. This is Dale Carnegie as one example, whereby they have different micro-credentials. And again, these are badges that represent those micro-credentials in various skill areas. And somebody can click the button and say, okay, what are the courses that I need to take in order to earn that micro-credential as an active learner or cool-headed or customer-focused? So each different micro-credential could have different assessments. It could have different qualifications that you need to go through in order to earn that micro-credential. So here, this one may have 3 different courses that somebody has to take, and it will then provide that opportunity for them to earn that badge that relates to the active listener credential or micro-credential, versus this one could have 6 different courses, and it could have you have to have a manager sign off that you have actually showcased this in your workplace, or whatever the other kinds of qualifications are. One of the things that you want to focus in on is making sure that those are very clear of how somebody can then earn those micro-credentials. So here's another example in the roofing industry that, again, it could be that somebody wants to earn either one of these types of micro-credentials, and they have to go through different areas in order to do that. So somebody may these are just again examples, be working with steep slope kind of roofing, but then they may have desire, this would be the certification, they may have desire for learning other things that aren't necessarily covered in that certification. So they can take just 2 or 3 or 4 of these whatever it may be that helps them to, again, attain the type of job placement that they're looking for, or it may be that they want to advance in their career in some other ways, and it gives them the opportunity to be recognized by the authority in that industry that they have indeed achieved or attained these skills or competencies. So the things that I would recommend that you consider if horizontal types of micro-credentials may seem like it's the right type of micro-credential for you to develop for your organization and your industry, the two things that I would suggest that you think about would be potentially, are there any key functional areas or tools in your field which there's no current accessible way for a professional to learn them or prove their mastery? So they may have that certification, but there may be other areas that or other tools that they need to learn in order to be successful as they're advancing their career in a certain space. So again, this could be something that leads up to certification, or it can be something that is provided after certification. So you want to think through, how does this then fit within my industry and my organization? The second thing that you may want to consider is, are there any prerequisites, or is there anything that has to be attained in any particular order? If so, a horizontal type of structure may not be the best way for you. It may be that it has to be more vertical. So you want to think through, if there aren't any prerequisites necessarily that somebody has to get, but rather that you give them an opportunity to have their own, to create their own pathway for their own learning, then horizontal may be the right choice as you're structuring your micro-credentialing program. The third type of micro-credential that I want to present today is this idea of the value added. I like looking at this as sort of course clustering. So what this means, this is just an example from DeVry University for their nursing program. They had thought about, okay, well, we have this nursing program, this nursing degree that somebody can earn, but somebody may want to specialize in mental health. So they said, all right, we're going to offer 5 classes. Somebody can certainly choose, so it gives that freedom or that pathway, 3 out of the 5 courses. And if they take those 3 out of the 5, they can earn a micro-credential in mental health. So some organizations would potentially consider this a certificate. In the model for higher education, they may or may not have that as an option. So this just gives the opportunity for students in this environment to say, all right, I want to have more of a specialty area that's again bestowed to me by an authority, this being the university. It gives me the freedom to choose my own pathway of courses that either work within my schedule or courses that are interesting to me. And then by clustering those together, the university says, okay, you got to take 3 out of the 5. From a revenue standpoint, the more classes somebody takes, the more revenue you can generate. So again, it encourages people to say, all right, I want that mental health micro-credential. I have to take the 3 courses. It's not like they're going to stop at 2. So typically people do all or nothing. So again, that revenue driver could be an encouragement for somebody to take additional coursework in order to earn that credential because they want something in the end. And again, the place for the cross place where badges fit in is that they earn that micro-credential. A badge can be issued for that they can then again put on their social media platforms or put on their resumes or have it as a tool for them to be to showcase the fact that they have indeed earned this micro-credential. So another value-added opportunity that we've seen in the certification industry and the association industry is this opportunity to do a certification plus. So while I talked about those opportunities to get new folks that are just emerging in that industry to provide them with certain acknowledgement that they are moving towards certification. This could be an opportunity then for somebody who has already earned that certification to get that certification plus. So again, that value add may be, all right, these are the things that you need to do in order to earn the plus or the mastery, the expert type of certification. And while it may not be leveled, it could be its own type of micro-credential where it's again value added. Not everybody has to take it. You don't get diminished or your career doesn't get faltered because you don't have it. But again, it gives an opportunity for an individual to differentiate themselves. And from an organizational standpoint, it gives you the opportunity to provide that value add for your certificates by offering more opportunities for them to engage with you and more opportunities for them to be acknowledged for their commitment to their career. So in terms of the value added structure, these are some things that I would recommend that you consider when you're adopting this type of micro-credential. So certainly the first thing is if your field, does your field already have a certification? If so, are there specialty areas that somebody can work within? So some organizations may not even have a structure for that yet. So I'm going to give an example of sonographers. So they are folks who take pictures and echoes of people's hearts. So it may be that they earn the certification for that, but then they want to specialize in maternity health, or they want to specialize with children. There may or may not be a certification in that area or a certificate in that area. So rather, an organization can develop opportunities for people to be recognized for expertise areas in those nuanced specialty fields. Another opportunity there that you may want to consider is any kind of new tool or technique, or certainly technology that somebody wants to become a specialist in. So I work with a variety of different organizations that have certifications within technical areas. So it may be, I'm going to use that example of the sonographers again. It may be that there's a GE machine or a Toshiba machine that they may want to have expertise in, and it's not offered to them in a convenient way. So this could give an opportunity for an organization, a certification organization, to say, hey, let's partner with those organizations, those technical support types of companies, to be able to provide these micro-credentials for our folks, because we already know from JTAs and from talking to employers that having those skill sets on these specific technical devices may be important to career development. So by doing some partnerships with those types of companies, or even to provide it in-house, may give you another opportunity for outreach to your certificates. And again, those mastery levels I talked a little bit about. And finally, how do the people demonstrate that they are specialists? Do you have a structure in place so that somebody doesn't just say, yep, I am a specialist in this, and it's self-reported? Oftentimes when we look at resumes, it could be an entire resume full of things that are self-reported, and an employer looks at that and they're like, I don't know whether this person actually has this. They tell me they do, but how will I really know? And as everybody on the call knows, that's why certification exists, because we are the authority in a specific place, and we can truly tell whether somebody has an expertise in a certain area. So this gives another opportunity, again, for you to dive a little deeper into a specific skill area or competency that you could recognize an individual for, and show that they have indeed gained some mastery in certain areas beyond just their certification, or certainly leading up to their certification. So with this, I'm going to pause and ask another poll question. I also want to mention, if there are any other questions, the chat box is open and Arj is manning that. So if there are any questions at the end, I'm going to take some of those. But the poll question that I'd like to get answered right now is, what opportunities do you see for micro-credentials in your industry? So now that I've kind of outlined a lot of this, do you see opportunities to repackage some existing content where you are already offering webinars and other opportunities, and you can say, oh, I didn't realize I can package this together in a micro-credential? B, creating more of a learner-centered environment where there are different pathways towards expertise areas or opportunities for people to learn skill and competency, get acknowledged for skills and competencies that they have developed in your industry. C, addressing a specific learning topic or skill that may or may not be covered by your certification. D, rewarding the journey towards meeting that certification, or certainly provided after that certification. And E, I put in there, is any other things. And if there are other things that you're considering, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about it in the chat box.
We'll leave the polling screen up here for about a minute here. So if we could just please ask you all to respond to the polling question that's up here right now. And for other, you can add that to the question box in your GoToWebinar console. Just give you a little bit more time on this, and then we will close the poll question down. Okay, I think we've given enough time. I'm going to close that down right now. And Ginger, would you like me to share those results?
Please.
Here we go.
Oh, we've got a nice variety there. So it looks like our top one is address a specific learning topic or skill area. I would say that that is what we're finding as well, is that sometimes skill areas are not necessarily being addressed by the broader certification. And so therefore it gives another opportunity for organizations to say, okay, what are the other things that we're not covering within our certification? So I think that that is really exciting to see and really provides that, that opportunity for you to consider how micro-credentials might support that. And obviously that learner-centered environment, we've talked a lot about that. I'm excited to see that there are a lot of you that are also thinking about that, providing opportunities for your learners or your stakeholders to provide, to kind of create their own pathway based on their career goals and their career needs. So those two I think are really important, and I'm thrilled to see that that also is something that is opportunities for you to develop micro-credentials in your area. So I'm going to end with a couple different sides. Just a lot of individuals, organizations ask me, all right, so when you're consulting, what are some of the things that we don't want to misstep on? What are some of the misconceptions or areas that we don't want to make any mistakes on? So I just have a short list. Sometimes this is helpful to see where other organizations have gone wrong. So the first thing is just jumping on the bandwagon. Okay, we're going to start micro-credentialing without a goal or plan. So one of the things I always tell organizations as they're starting out with this is to have a plan in place and to be flexible about that plan. Obviously, things change. You may not always get it right the first time, but having a goal and a plan is always a wonderful place to start. I also talk about this idea of paralysis by analysis. So, and everybody in the certification market knows this, is that sometimes we can also overthink something. So we want to also have a place to start. So sometimes I would mention to organizations as I'm working on professional services with them, is saying, all right, let's start with something small that's bite-sized that we can handle, and then broadening that up once we get our skis underneath us. So the other thing that I would say is that you really want to consider that instructional design process. It's something that is potentially worth bringing other people on board with, either in-house or hiring somebody who's an instructional designer who has experience with this. I would say that oftentimes one of the missteps that we find in organizations is that it's very siloed. Something that you want to make sure that you're doing is you're bringing in the marketing team, because they're the ones that are going to support the outreach to your certificants on this. So that instructional design process may include them in that, because they sometimes have an outward view into what employers are looking for and what certificants are looking for. So bringing in and matching those silos is something that I really strongly encourage. And really thinking through, okay, how is it that we can design these micro-credentials so that it makes sense? And that's what instructional designers can oftentimes provide the expertise on. As I mentioned that before, that marketing opportunity there, it's also about really smart marketing tools. So a lot of organizations ask me, okay, I don't want this to usurp my certification or take away from my certification. So that's something that you really do want to consider, is how do you manage that market perception that, okay, I don't need any certification anymore because I can just earn all these micro-credentials. So it's really being strategic about saying how this won't cannibalize your certification, but rather find that value add or provide your certificates as well as the broader industry, employers, et cetera, with an opportunity or a structure around understanding what other skill areas might be. So I'd always try to think through how that might be communicated to your broader audience, so that there isn't that conflict between micro-credentials and designations or certifications. And finally, that idea of providing that strategy. So you want to be able to provide, again, I've talked about this a couple times, but I want to stress it, that regardless of the stage of their career, that it gives, that you're thinking through a strategy of, okay, I'm putting myself in the place of somebody who's new to my field versus somebody who is experienced in my field. And how do you provide value add for both of those types of individuals? And so being very strategic about how somebody is a lifelong learner within your industry. I know that I don't exactly want to say any of the statistics, I don't know it off the top of my head, but people change careers very readily in this day and age. So how can we help them to stay within an industry but still remain relevant? So having a strategy around providing these other opportunities for somebody to maintain their relevance in your industry so that they can utilize that expertise and build upon it. That's something that you really want to think about and think through as you are developing these micro-credentialing and developing this program. And lastly, some considerations. And again, this is just reiterating some of the things that I've already talked about. Obviously, finding those goals. So being very, very thoughtful about sitting down and saying, okay, what are the goals, and will micro-credentials be a good match for meeting those goals? It isn't right for every organization. So certainly bringing in a professional, like a consultant or somebody else who has knowledge about what this can provide, they may tell you, hey, no, this isn't the most appropriate way for you to structure your programs. It's going to do this or that. So thinking about what your goals are and seeing if micro-credentials really are a good fit for you. Certainly those JTAs or employer input is vital. So, JTAs, job task analyses, cost a lot of money. Many organizations can only afford to do them every 5 to 8 years. Lots happens between, within that window. So micro-credentials gives you the flexibility to answer some of those potential skill and competency gaps in between job task analysis or in between when you're redeveloping some of your items. Your questions within your certification and the types of things that your certification is addressing. So it allows you to be nimble. And an employer, if you have somebody who is a liaison to employers within your industry, they may be telling you, no, we need somebody not only that has your certification, but has these other skills. Those other skills may not even be connected necessarily with your specific nuanced area of certification. It may mean that it may be other soft skills, or it might be some type of computer programming skills that's related, but it's not necessarily content driven by your industry. It would be very, very smart of you to think about, okay, if this is what employers are looking for, how can we bring that in-house, or how can we partner with an organization that can provide acknowledgement that somebody has these skills and competencies, because it will definitely add to their success in the job force. I also talk about this idea of badging. So I talked about the differences between micro-credentialing and badging. However, badging helps support that. So if somebody's earning a micro-credential, they certainly want something that acknowledges the fact that they have done that, and they want to be able to publish that or display that in places that are meaningful to them. So oftentimes that's LinkedIn. Oftentimes that's their resume or their email signatures, etc. Everybody lives digital lives in this day and age, and so providing that opportunity to utilize a badging program along with the micro-credentialing program and having those complement each other is oftentimes pretty important. And so then thinking through your badge designs. If you're already issuing badges for your certification, how could you create designs such that this will, again, not visually cannibalize your certification, but again, having a scope and sequence, or having a common branding standard across all of your micro-credentials, so that somebody visually knows that that indeed is a micro-credential in your industry and from your organization. Being flexible and agile, that's the name of the game for micro-credentials. And again, you may not get it right off the bat, but having built-in tools that allow you to be flexible and agile and allow your concepts to evolve. So it may be that you start with a very horizontal model and then you decide, oh wait, but there's opportunities here for levels. So having the ability to be fairly nimble in that also will provide you the flexibility that you need in order to create successful micro-credentialing programs. Two of the other last aspects I'm going to talk about is this idea of ongoing requirements. So people often ask me about expiration. It's interesting to me, as many of you who are utilizing badges know, badges can expire. Once they expire, they can't be shared anymore. So many certification bodies use that medium to be able to maintain the integrity of their credential, because if you don't want somebody saying they have it when they no longer have it. So micro-credentials can either be something that they earn and they don't expire, or it could be something that they earn and then 2 years later they need to come back for a 1-hour webinar, or they need to provide some evidence that they have utilized these skills or competencies in the industry, whatever that may be. So having ongoing requirements for somebody to maintain their credentials is also a consideration that you may want to have. Do they expire? Do they not expire? And the other thing is that you want to think about, do you want to have the ability to revoke that? So again, badges, that technology allows you that ability to revoke a credential or pull back a badge if you need it. Micro-credentials may or may not need that level of rigor or the level of control, but you want to think about that as you're developing your program. So I like to leave you here just as a kind of an end to the session here. You may want to hire a personal trainer, and you have Bob, the personal trainer, that says, I'm awesome, but he has nothing to prove for it. And then you have Jeff, who's able to say, not only am I good, and here's my recommendations from various friends that you have, but here are the other micro-credentials that I've earned in our industry. And you can click on any one of those if you utilize badges and see all the metadata that underlies that, and see that I really have attained certain levels of mastery in skill areas and competency areas, and it has been validated by an authority in my space. So I like to leave you there because I think the visual really helps. And I think that there's something very unique. I'm very excited about the way that organizations are moving towards micro-credentials. And with that, I don't know if there's been any questions in the chat box, but certainly we have a couple minutes here if there are any questions that I can answer.
Yeah, there were a few, and actually, let me get to the first one, Ginger. I'm not sure if you alluded to this earlier. It's a question posted by Stephen. Stephen, thank you very much. How are the processes of micro-credential creation demonstrating compliance with accreditation standards?
It's a great question.
He says the validation of each accomplishment seems challenging, especially at the early introduction of the credentials.
Absolutely. So this is sort of one of those things that it's an emerging type of concept. So when we think about accreditation, it's not necessarily something that applies to this, and it could be a good thing or a bad thing. So the good part of it is it allows an organization to be far more nimble, because it isn't quite as stringent, and the red tape isn't quite as red, I'll just say that, in terms of being able to provide other opportunities for learning for your stakeholders. So I think there is something good about keeping those two things very separate, and really being very clear and strategic about the fact that this isn't a formally accredited program, but rather opportunities for your stakeholders to have additional learning, have additional opportunities to be recognized for various skills and competencies within their industry. So again, you want to be very clear in your marketing and in your broader communication with your industry stakeholders, be it employers, be it other certification bodies, licensure bodies, that this again is not something that has gone through an accreditation process, but rather it is an opportunity for your stakeholders, your earners, your members, to be recognized for things that they may already be doing or things that they're interested in within your industry.
Great, thank you, Ginger. And there is a question, there's two more questions. I think we can get to two more before we actually have to take our last polling question for the CAE and conclude today. But the next question is actually about Badge Cert. It says, is the Badge Cert platform accessible /WCAG 2.0 AA or higher to those who use assistive technologies? Yeah. May have to table that question if you don't.
I'm going to table that one because I'm trying to think of what the acronym is. I may need more words than that. But just in terms of usability, I think that may be what the question is about. And I'm certainly happy to answer any badge cert questions. That's not the nature of this presentation, but I'm happy to answer any. My contact information is up on the screen right now. I will say that in terms of where badge cert sits in the industry, because we're experts in micro-credentialing, and our platform supports leveling up and other aspects of micro-credentialing. Just as a background, I was a professor of education for 15 years before starting the company. So in developing the technology, this is the passion that I had, was around micro-credentials. So certification for badges is a no-brainer. One badge to one certification, recognized, great. But it's this other concept of micro-credentialing that actually is sort of the meat and potatoes of what's next, and what badges can actually represent and how they could be used best. So the way that we developed our platform was such that certainly certification came first, and now it sort of is the hey mom look no hands kind of opportunity to look at badges as a technology that can help support your goals when you're considering micro-credentialing.
Thanks, Ginger. And that was posed by Samantha. Samantha, we promise you we will get you an answer to that. We are no filters here at ACGI and Badge Cert, so we're gonna just keep asking some questions. Probably one more right now. So the next question is, but thank you for that question. Next question is, curious how others are gaining industry employer regulatory acceptance of newly developed micro-credentials. Candidates earning them will look for acceptance of them from others.
Of course. So one of the things that we always suggest, again, is bringing employers into your strategic concepts of when you're developing this. So certainly you want to ask the employers in your industry, okay, how can we help to make this recognizable in our broader organizational ecosystem? So bringing them in, certainly asking them is one thing, but then it's about the marketing. So I think too often marketing gets siloed from other aspects of your organization, and it's very, very important to bring those folks in and have them help support the ways that you're doing outreach and communicating the value of this to the, again, your more broader, the broader stakeholders in your ecosystem. So I think marketing is absolutely key. And certainly providing things like videos, things like other testimonials and things like that, going out to employers in your area and really drumming up business for this. I think that being a liaison and being in communication with employers in your industry is a good practice no matter what. And this, again, gives you another opportunity to go to those employers with something that's meaningful and purposeful and saying, hey, this is a program that we're developing. What do you think? How can we market this and what have you? So I think anytime you develop something new, it's a new opportunity as well to reach out both to the earners in your space as well as those employers, and really kind of provide a wonderful handshake opportunity, a wonderful engagement opportunity with the other elements in your ecosystem.
Really appreciate everyone's participation today. You've been great. In just a moment here, I am going to go to the next poll question.